Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you, John, for the warm introduction. It is a pleasure to join you today on this rather cold morning here in Johannesburg to share our latest insights and outlook on passenger arrivals to Africa. In this presentation, I'll give you an overview of the current status of travel across the globe, and then we'll zoom in on Africa, the arrivals, and the opportunities in the market. But first, a few words about ForwardKeys and the data we'll be using in this presentation. We're a business-to-business travel analytics company specializing in air ticketing data. We use big data to help our customers understand travel demand and the trends in real time. If you'd like to know more about us, visit our website to see how we can help you. In today's presentation, we'll use two key data sets to look into the future of travel: issued air tickets and seat capacity. So what can we learn from this data? I would like to start with a snapshot of the current situation worldwide, as this is the starting point of our journey into the future. The first few months have been quite bleak for global international arrivals, with widespread declines of 85% year-on-year across all continents. Europe and the Asia-Pacific region have thus far experienced the steepest declines. Africa has performed better than average due to the reopening and reactivation of many destinations. The recovery of international travel is being hampered by the unequal evolution of the pandemic across the globe and travel restrictions that keep changing at short notice. Compared to the same time last year, travel restrictions across the Northern Hemisphere have largely remained unchanged. Meanwhile, when comparing to 2020, destinations across Africa have opened up quite significantly. To date, most countries on the continent only require PCR tests for entry with minimum or no quarantine requirements. What a refreshing step forward. Now, let me share some insights on the arrivals into Africa. For most of this year, Sub-Saharan Africa has had an edge over North Africa, as we can see in blue. But as the European summer begins and travel restrictions continue to be relaxed, North Africa is set for a rebound, as we can see in orange. European countries have long been the main source markets for African tourism. However, what is noteworthy is the US resilience and interest in long-haul travel to Africa. Saudi Arabia is another interesting market to capture. Looking ahead at Q3 and Q4, the DR Congo, Cameroon, and Ivory Coast look set to be the most resilient destinations in Africa. This is mostly driven by strong interest from visiting friends and relatives and expats who originate from fellow Francophone countries such as Belgium, Canada, and France. As mentioned earlier, US travelers are keen to travel long haul to Africa this summer. As I mentioned earlier, most African countries have minimal COVID entry requirements for arrivals from the USA, requiring only a PCR test and a health declaration form. And once again, VFR and expat packs are driving the interest. Morocco has greatly benefited from its exclusion on the USA CDC no travel list. Despite this, Ghana, Nigeria, Cape Verde, and Sudan have been the real standout performers. Worth noting is that Ghana's performance is being bolstered by newly established airlinks from the USA. This brings me to the next section, highlighting the importance of connectivity despite all the volatility. Looking at seat capacity for intra-Africa travel in Q3 and Q4, we can see a modest downward trend. This is reflective of the volatility that still exists in the market, as airlines are constantly attempting to adjust supply to anticipated demand. Looking at the top 10 city pairs within Africa, I beg your pardon, what is immediately noticeable is that only 3 of the 10 do not originate or terminate in Addis Ababa. This illustrates the critical role that Addis Ababa plays as an essential cog in sustaining air connectivity, even in Africa. When we look at seat capacity for long-haul travel into Africa for Q3 and Q4, we can see the same volatility we saw previously. However, there is an upward adjustment in seat capacity for travel toward the end of this year in anticipation for the Christmas holidays. Despite this, the situation for some countries is optimistic, as we see in West Africa. Ghana and Senegal can expect to perform well above average. The next question is, how are passengers getting here? While Addis Ababa and Paris are jostling for pole position as the leading hub into Africa, what we should be cognizant of is the dependency of the continent on non-African hubs to funnel passengers to their final destinations. This puts countries on the continent in a vulnerable position because if travel restrictions are imposed at any of these hubs, connectivity into the continent would be adversely impacted. To further illustrate this, only 45% of arrivals into Africa are channeled from a direct flight. The remainder relies on connecting hubs, sometimes even 2 airports, to arrive at their final destination. Now let's turn our attention to the passenger trends we can expect to see. COVID-19 has all but decimated business travel, but on the flip side, VFR and expats have proven to be the most resilient passenger segment. And this is an exciting segment because the next slide shows that they are staying abroad longer. The share of travelers intending to take long stays of 22 nights or more has increased by 26% when compared to the same period in 2019. This trend is being underpinned by interest from VFR and expats, as we saw in the previous slide, as well as pent-up demand for travel from key source markets. So what are the opportunities and threats looking ahead? Firstly, vaccination will be a key driver in the reactivation of travel across the globe. As we can see in this chart with data supplied from Our World in Data, Africa is lagging far behind the global average. We have witnessed that the rapid pace of vaccination in North Africa and Europe has allowed some normality to return sooner than expected, and this in turn has boosted air travel demand in these regions. By some estimates, COVID-19 is expected to be with us for the next few years. Thus, the creation of travel bubbles or safe corridors with key source markets within Africa and outside of Africa is going to be an absolute necessity. As we can see here, the recently established travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand immediately spurred demand between the two countries. So what are the key takeaways? Firstly, pent-up demand for international travel remains robust. Second, countries with fast vaccine rollouts, low COVID incidence rates, coupled with minimal entry requirements will be favored. Thirdly, seamless and consistent air connectivity is critical for a full rebound in the travel industry. And lastly, reliable data can help destinations tap into new source markets. These are just a few of the highlights that we can do with, these are just a few highlights of what we can do with our data. Once again, I'm Shingai George. It has been an absolute pleasure presenting these insights to you. We regularly publish fresh insights and analysis on our website and via our social media channels. So follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter, or request a demo of our solutions. Thank you once again for your time today. Have a pleasant day.